Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Today we got a repeat and amazing guest on, Nick Laidlaw. He runs the page Battles and Beers and also the author of What War Did to Us, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4 is coming out, correct, soon?
3 and 4 are coming out pretty soon.
3 and 4. Okay. All right. Good to go. So volumes 1 and 2 are out, and Nick does a lot of amazing stuff. He's I would say, journalist, combat journalist, and storyteller, former Marine. I've had him on the podcast before. Love having him on. Good friend. And he just got back from a trip from Ukraine about 2-3 weeks ago or so. And so we're just going to talk about his experiences there and kind of what's going on in the world of warfare. So, well, thanks for coming on, Greg.
Thanks for having me back. Always good to be here and chat with you.
Absolutely, man. All right, sweet. So you went to Ukraine, was about a year and a half ago. When was the first time you stepped foot there?
The last time I was in Ukraine was in November of 2022. So that's like right when the Battle of Bakhmut was really starting to kick up. It was the last time I was there.
Okay. And so now it's 2 years later.
2 years
so
later, exactly.
Yeah. So what's the differences that you've seen then? Because when I went, I got to move around the country a lot more. We went from, east to west to all the way out to Kharkiv. What did you notice the difference? You headed down to Kherson, and where'd you go the first time, and then how does it feel for the second time? Well, what's the difference?
So the first time I was in Ukraine, I was there primarily documenting older battlefields and prearranged interviews in the interior of Ukraine. So I was in Irpin, Moshun, Kyiv itself. We went to Hostomel. Then we went up north, like kind of by Chernobyl, just to see like where the Russians had been and stuff like that. So the first trip, like it was so non-kinetic that we didn't even hear like artillery off in the distance, And so this last trip was much, much different.
So yeah, fill us in, man. Nick was texting me over Signal while he was there, so I was making sure he was still alive. So yeah, man, fill us in how this was a little bit more exciting.
So this time was much more kinetic than my first trip, and before. So in between these two trips, I went to Israel on the Gaza border, and that's where I kind of first got my like first taste of like combat, like real combat journalism, But this time in Ukraine, I really kind of wanted to kick it up a notch and get more like footage from the front lines. So I planned to go to Kherson, which is a city in the south of Ukraine. It's on the Dnipro River. And the city was formerly occupied by Russian forces. Like right when the war started, the Russians were like in Kherson occupying it within a week. And so it was under occupation for like 8 or 9 months, and there's some like real like horror stories that came out of there. Because I interviewed a whole bunch of civilians who had been through the occupation, and they were still in Kherson. It's a city of 300,000. It was a city of 300,000, and there's only about 50 to like 70,000 people still remaining there. But it's like right on the front line, and so there's Kherson, there's the river, and then there's the Russians right there, and so they do cross river incursions, both sides, all the time. But it's also a city closed to foreigners. So I didn't like sneak in, but I got in with another group who was going to train soldiers down there in Kherson. And so I just kind of like folded in with them, and just handed my ID and my passport and stuff like that. We got through the checkpoint. And so I was only planning to spend like 3 days there, and I ended up being there for like almost 12, just because there's so much to see. The kind of unique thing about Kherson right now, you can go on this Russian Telegram channel. It's called From Mariupol to the Carpathians, and from what I understand, it's run by some of the Russian drone teams who are operating just south of the river there. And what they're doing now is basically just indiscriminately like drone bombing people in Kherson. Like when I was there, like just a normal civilian car across the street from us got drone bombed. I was told so it's kind of a weird situation there where there's like a whole bunch of collaborators. There's drones in the sky all the time. The city's constantly getting hit by artillery. I don't think there was like a 20-minute period where I didn't hear an explosion somewhere in the city. So what I was doing initially is we were kind of just wandering around Kherson, checking it out. So I was there with my translator and my medic. And it's a creepy vibe, like in northern Kherson, like when you come in down the highway there, that you pass like the famous Kherson sign, on those pillars and stuff like that. And it was pretty normal feeling going through there. But the further south you go into the city, you stop seeing as many people, you stop seeing as many cars. Then like you see like only like the local drunks are outside, and then when you don't even see the stray dogs around, then it's like it's real spooky, you know. And like you're close enough, like if you stand on a hill, like on a street in the city, you can look across the river and see the Russian positions. They're literally like right there. So that's like what I did in Kherson. Basically, was just I interviewed a lot of the civilians who were there, some of the soldiers, stuff like that. I actually met one of the developers of Stalker 2. Like he's in a unit down there, and so I chatted with him a little bit about the game and stuff like that. I got a little bit of insider information before it came out of what to
That's
expect.
awesome. Yeah.
But so yeah, I don't know if you can pull it up on Google Maps later for the show or not, but there's this island called Ostriv, which is like, it's not connected to Kherson by like land per se. It's just connected by like this tiny little bridge, and there's tons of videos uploaded by this Russian Telegram channel of them hitting cars at the roundabout north of the bridge and then on the bridge itself. And so when I was told we were going to try to go across that bridge to get to these buildings, where the soldiers were quartered, I was like, oh man, like bridges are pretty spooky, because I didn't get the Marine Corps experience that like the guys who came before me got. Like Israel was kind of kinetic, but like I'd never done anything like this before. Like I'd never been like 500 meters from uniformed armed soldiers with machine guns and drones and artillery and stuff like that. So that was a completely new experience for me. But so we got across the bridge, and that first night we just drank in a building with some Ukrainian soldiers. They got to know me. We chatted, traded stories, stuff like that. And then the next morning they took me out to a drone position. They took just me and the medic out. And we're like driving in this old pickup truck, like going like mock Jesus down this like shell cratered road until we get to a building, and then like he shoves me out of the pickup truck, like go up the stairs, stuff like that. And we're greeted in the building by a Ukrainian soldier like pointing a shotgun at me, and I don't speak any Ukrainian. I'm just like dressed in like my journalist garb. The other guy who's with us that speaks Ukrainian was like, hey, it's us, we're just coming to check it out. So I was with them for a little bit, and they were hunting a Russian T-90 in the area, and you could see all these big craters and this like these big holes in the walls and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, the T-90 knows where we are, so you probably shouldn't stay too long because we're just having like a tank drone battle sort of thing. And then so we leave after that, and then the next day we decide, okay, it's kind of foggy. If we're gonna go to the front positions, like now's the best time to do it. And so we wake up early, we go out, meet these soldiers who are, because they're trading outposts and stuff like that. It's change of the guard per se. And so we're just kind of standing there behind this building drinking some coffees and stuff like that, and this old van that has no electronic warfare on it pulls up. They open the sliding door, we all get in. There's like 10 of us in this 8-pack van, and I'm like scared shitless now because the fog is gone. There's 10 of us in this van with no EW, and then there's no trees on this road. It's just like straight down there to the positions, and we're already like well within drone range, and so like the artillery's already started up by this point in the day. And because it usually is heaviest in the morning and then heaviest in the evening, and then throughout the day there's more sporadic artillery unless their drones spot something worth shooting at. So I'm in this van all kitted up with my stuff, all the other soldiers are in there, they're talking and stuff. I'm so nervous, dude, because it's like I've seen enough videos of Ukraine with FPV drones to know like what a likely outcome could be of this trip in our van. So I'm just hoping like if something hits us, like the meat of these other 9 people like shields me.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the back of this van, and the guy behind me notices that like I'm like pretty like visibly nervous about this first trip to the zero line. And so he pulls out his phone, he pulls up YouTube, and he starts playing the Magic School Bus song. And I've got a video of that, of him behind me playing the, like, we're all on the Magic School Bus sort of thing. And I was, the tension just kind of dropped 2 notches, So we get out to the position, and we go into this building, and there's like cots on the floor, like there's a guy cooking on a frying pan in the back. Troops trade out. And then one of the soldiers is like, "Are you ready?" I was like, "Ready for what? Like, aren't we here?" And he's like, "No, we're going to keep going." And so we run out of this building, and like the entrance to the trench is like right there.
Yeah.
And so we're like running through these trenches, and I got some really good shots of like Russian positions, like just a couple 100 meters right across the river. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, so the photo you have is, or was that the guy that was with you, or was that you that was running? Like that photo you posted was phenomenal.
Yeah. So my translator, who also now can put camera operator on his resume, he was filming with my iPhone behind me, and he got some like great shots of us moving through the trenches and stuff like that.
Before we keep going with the podcast, I want to drop this week's discount code for 9line Apparel. We're not just a brand, we're a lifestyle that celebrates the spirit of freedom, courage, and American values. Go check out our gear, including hoodies, glassware, flags, jackets, hats, patches, and much more. All materials ethically sourced, so every shirt you buy is free of slave labor. As a veteran-owned and operated company, we also take pride in giving back to those who've served. Your purchase helps us contribute to charitable initiatives supporting veterans and first responders. This episode's discount code is BNB20 for 20% off 9line Apparel products. Bravo, November, Bravo, 20. Not 10, not 15, 20%. Not 25 because that's a bit excessive. So get over to the store and get yourself 20% off your next purchase. While you're at it, like, listen, and subscribe to the 9line podcast for future discount codes and more conversations with amazing guests like today. Now back to the podcast.
That's awesome. I feel like a lot of the Ukrainian fighters have become really good videographers and photographers. like the amount of stuff that's coming out, you're just like, oh my god, like everybody is like a war journalist.
Yeah,
like it's
like, do you even need me?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, it's a different type of war, especially when it comes to documenting it. While I was working with Bet TV now, we can pull a lot of stuff off of Telegram, historical. Just be like, hey, we don't have to cut to some old stock footage from World War II. Like, you literally like, oh yeah, this is exactly what it feels like. Because here's the GoPro footage of guys getting smoked, or units are, like, hey, you can use our footage. And it's just like it's such a crazy different war, especially now since it's kicked off, where it's been over 2 years that they have YouTube channels and Instagram channels to be like promote. It's like the opposite of what we did. Like there's OPSEC, but it's not that heavy. It's like, oh, we need to promote our channels so that we can get more money, so we can keep fighting, and raise funds, which is wild. Which is at the same point, though, that would be pretty dope if the U.S. military kind of greenlit that. That was like, you just have your sniper platoons, and you're like, oh, this is our social media channel that, people can donate to the,
that's like the disappointing thing about the DWAT is there's not enough like helmet cam footage.
No, it would have been towards the end of the wars. There was a few, but like, it was so sporadic, and it's like a lot of guys' footage was just like walking around, because I knew a few guys that had them. I had like 2 of them, but it just really wasn't worth doing, but there's some guys that did have some good GoPro footage. But GoPro was pretty in its, I won't say infancy, it kind of was though, that was definitely, GoPro would have like their first ones come out, and then the battery life sucks. So it's like, even if you'd have to like almost like, unless you're in an area which some guys knew in Afghanistan, like, okay, we're about to get hit, you would be like, they turn it on. But dude, I had the first GoPro, I had the Hero 2 that I bought as Hero 2 or Hero 3 in 2012, and that was a hunk of shit. It was terrible. And I was taking it on vacation, dude. It was fucking terrible. I hated it. I literally was like, I bought hook, line, and sinker into their bullshit propaganda marketing team, you know, and I got it, and it was like, it barely lasts that long. At the time, you had to buy a case to go underwater. So then I had to buy a backpack for that case. You didn't know what the fuck you're filming, so you had to buy an additional LCD screen. So then it turned into like this bigger thing.
Yeah, I had the same one.
Yeah, it was like it's like 2 or 3, like 20 minutes maybe you might get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember just junking it for a long time. I mean, I have a Hero 11 now, but like, yeah, it's just different times. You know, it's just like, there's one helmet cam that I think some people had. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a Contour. My buddy had Cornwall. He actually had some pretty cool combat footage. Yeah, they just don't have it now. Yeah, dude, holy shit. Your iPhone, guys, you could make documentaries. Like if you're in a trench for like, 2-3 months or in a unit, you can use your iPhone, get some phenomenal footage.
Yeah, my friend Dimitro, he was an artist before the war, and he takes like phenomenal videos and pictures with his iPhone. Like this, like
yeah,
he should be like a videographer for the Ukrainian army, like the stuff that he gets and stuff like that, because it's just so like it's just so beautifully shot. Like he's done videos where like they're moving through the trenches, and he'll like lay on the parapet and like hold his phone down by the trench wall and film all like the legs moving past him and stuff in the mud. He's incredible. He's wounded now and he got discharged because of his hand. I did a video on YouTube with him. He's great.
No, like I said, I think it's just a different type of technology. DSLRs, that was a big thing. We'll kind of go into the nerd talk. I guess Wardo is right now. It's the 5D Mark II that everyone revolutionized filmmaking or even journalism. Was the first DSLR that could film video on a full frame sensor. Like, and if you dive into cinematographers or as journalists or videography, it looks phenomenal. So the photos you're taking at 50 millimeter, like look great, you can now translate to video. So that was like that was a major breakthrough. So like all the new Red Bull stuff that was coming, it was like Red Bull, I think it was like 2007 or 8, I can't remember when it came out. But my buddy, he was in Cornwall, and he was, can't remember the guy's name, but his footage went all over the news of them firefighting in Cornwall. But he had this 5D Mark II, and so their footage looks fucking amazing. Even today, it looks amazing. It looks so good. I have like a condensed low bit rate version of it, of like this long 6, 7, 8 minute clip that he kind of chopped up probably to New York Times or wherever he's coming from, and it's like amazing. Like it's still like it's phenomenal footage even to this day. Like you can watch it and be like, yeah, it's awesome. So I mean that was not a lot of people had that. They're still shooting with the DV camera or whatever and whatnot, which is still fine, but it's not like now. Yeah, it's like I'm rolling up with A7S3s and we're and you run it through trenches, and then we have like amazing. I'm shooting slow mo. Like dude. You do all sorts of crazy. Capture amazing things, and like United 24 is doing amazing work. Even these YouTube channels that are the units, I mean, they know what they're doing. I mean, really working with them. Do they like color grade their footage, and they got like amazing music, and like, dude, it's like epic, and you're like, and they're just like bagging. It's like 1.1 million subscribers, and dude, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, if I could give one thing to history, it would be good GoPros and cameras. Like imagine the footage of Stalingrad, of like a German assault if you had a GoPro on, or like the trenches in World War One. Find a time machine. That's how I'd make my $1 trillion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the other thing too, I mean, like Fallujah battle, unless you know what's condensed, like, hey, there's a battle coming, like, so the guys, that were combat camera and journalists in the battle, they were like, this is a giant battle that's coming. That's where you get like that amazing footage, but day to day, most units weren't super. I mean, there's kinetic, but it just, it's like, it's not like we were running around. We had shitty point and shoot cameras. My point and shoot did have audio. We just take video. Like, what fucking camera would just take video? It was crazy. I
You're
remember I
recording
was
a
like,
silent film. Is this
it
Nosferatu?
was, yeah, it was ridiculous. It was like, and I was like, why does this not have audio? And I talked to my buddies, and we looked in the settings. It was like, just no, it's just like, oh, come video. And then there's a feature of like video and audio. And I'm like, so what the fuck would I shoot video with no audio? So I'm like, point and shoot camera, the first one I had on my first deployment. Yeah, it was just like, it just didn't have any audio. It's like a bunch of video that's like no audio. But yeah, it's ridiculous, man. But no, yeah, I agree, and I think it's pretty wild seeing that, and even access to the battlefield. You know, it's like guys like me and you are traditional combat journalists. You know that even like I said, you go back to the 2012 days. You know, like when Tim Harrington was killed in Libya. Yeah, that was 2011, I believe, and you know, or we're Strepo. You know, with Sebastian Younger and all that stuff. So, you know, the access we have is in the open, the OSINT network, I think is completely different. You know, you have people that have access to this stuff that you can make friends and get into these units with. You know, there's no like, oh man, we need to be part of the New York Times to get in there. We need to,
and that's the trick to it, man. Is like just knowing the guys in the units who can pour honey into their commander's ear to be like, hey, this guy's coming out. He wants to film us, take some pictures, do some interviews, you know, and like a lot of them are down for it. Like that. Yeah. I went to Israel, and like that trip, like journalism wise, was just like almost a total waste for me.
Yeah.
Because like I wasn't allowed to film any of the IDF soldiers. I wasn't allowed to talk to them. Like all I did was like film incoming rockets for 2 weeks. Like that's basically all I did was like get some combat experience out of that trip. That was literally it. But like Ukraine is just so different. Like especially if you like want to get into war journalism, it's like if you're willing to risk your life, and get like blacklisted to like never travel to Russia or Belarus ever again, you know, like it's a very accessible war, you know, especially if you can get the media accreditation. That helps a ton too, but it's not like 100% necessary because like a lot of the units that I went with, they didn't even ask for it. You know, they're like, "Oh, you're like Nick from Battles and Beers." Like, yeah, come on over.
Yeah.
So,
well, everyone's checking their social channels, so they know who you are. Yeah, you know, like they can check, like, are you pro-Ukrainian? Are you like, are you some asshole that hates the war? You know what I mean? Like they know they'll sniff you out real fast.
Yeah, they will.
You know, and you know, especially if we're respectful to what they're doing. Yeah, we did that with 3AB. You know, especially after we had left 2 days later, a bunch of them got wounded. Irish was killed. One of the guys that we talked to. And so I realized I'd filmed some of the footage with him, and so it was like the last conversations he had. So I made up a video for those guys like right away. It was like, hey, here's the last conversation we had on film.
That's always
it wasn't an interview. Yeah, and you're just like, and everyone, all the guys were just like, thank you so much. It's like, yeah, dude, like I'm not a fucking animal, you know, like it's you know, we're here to capture your stories as filmmakers, you know, and you know it's tough. Like I wish you know, it's terrible, but at the same point, I wish I had moments with my friends before they were killed. You know, like the last conversation we ever had around the smoke theater. You know, something you can bring back to. Like we didn't quite have a ton of those. I mean, you know, we did a lot in Afghanistan, filming random stupid shit, but you know, I was the one doing it, so you kind of, you know, it's not like I went up to my commanders all the time. Hey, do you want to say something to the camera? Like, no, dude, you know, but capture some of those moments, you know. So you got to earn that respect, you know, and whatnot, and how you display it. I mean, your reputation, proceed.
Yeah, you know, like
so
rolling off.
We go back. Yeah,
rolling off of that, like I've talked about this soldier in Mariupol, Anton Krill. Like I essentially documented his last words. Like I had interviewed him throughout like the second half of the battle. So like every day we were chatting, and he was giving me little updates about what was going on and stuff like that. And then his friend, call sign student, started talking to me too, you know, and then on the very last day that I interviewed Anton, he was killed. So like we finished our interview, and I was like, all right, man, I'll talk to you later. And then like a couple hours later, student sends me a message on Telegram, and he's like, hey, Anton, Tasman's been killed. You know, he was killed by some sort of indirect fire. I don't know. I wasn't there. And that was the last time I ever heard from student. And then they surrendered 2 weeks later. And then student, like in the beginning of September, sends me a message on Instagram from this burner account that had this like a very similar name to his original Instagram account, and he's like, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "Is this X person from Mariupol?" And he's like, "Yes." And I was like, "What was the name of your friend who was killed?" Because I thought this might be like a Russian like FSB officer, because that's happened before. If like I've interviewed guys, they get taken prisoner, and then I get messages from that account afterwards. And he's like, his name was Tasman. We talked this time on the last day, and I was like, oh my God, like send me a picture of you. And he sent me a picture, and it was him. He was in captivity for 851 days. And so I met with him in the East this most recent trip to Ukraine, and I sat down with him. I got his whole Mariupol story, all of his stories of being a prisoner of war and stuff like that. And then he calls me the next day, and he wants to go get tea at like 10 o'clock at night. And so we have to drive further from the front line because nothing is like open past 8 in some of these cities, like Kramatorsk, like nothing's really open. So we had to drive further from the front line. So we're in like this little shop drinking tea. And he asked me if I had any of Anton's stories saved on my phone. And I was like, yeah, dude, I've got like the whole thing here, and it's in Ukrainian if you want to read it. And he sat there and he like read all of like Anton's words, like, and it was one of the most profound, like full circle moments of my life, where it was like 2.5 years ago, I was interviewing these two guys. One of them died. And then I finally get the surviving guy in front of me, and he's reading the story that his friend wrote, and he's in some of these stories. And he's like laughing at some parts, and he's very serious for most of it, and he like his eyes are welling up and stuff like that. And afterwards he's done, he's like, thank you, I felt like I was with him again. And like going to what you said, being able to give that to the friends of the people who died, it's a, I wouldn't say it's a good feeling, but it's a feeling that it makes all the rest of like the bullshit worth it. Like I was able to give Student a piece of Anton, and so like that's going to live on forever is his words on page. So,
no, I agree. And I think that's, guys are the GWOT guys, we're starting to tell our stories more. I think that's becoming a little more, I don't say mainstream, but I think a lot of guys are just, after the GWOT's been over now for 3 years, guys are starting, even like myself, it's like, hey, all right, let's start getting it out to the public per se, like now's the time, you always have your social media influencers, they've already been out there for like 10, 12 years already, but I think now guys are really coming out with like, hey, I feel like I should tell these stories. I didn't think I could do it before, but what's kind of cool, I should say cool, but like with the Ukrainians, they can capture everything, and write their journals down. It's like the technology is just different that like allows that, and to be interviewed and to be like, hey, why are you here? What's going on? There's so many avenues to get their stories out. That would be nuts to be able to, like, we had our own Instagram page as a platoon, and you got to see, like, the families got to see everything we did every other day, battles, or just interviewing each other, fucking off, and they can see that through the next 6-7 months on social media, on Instagram, on that's such a wild way to think, you know what I mean? Like, or, and who knows, maybe the next war that kicks off that war, which God knows, I don't know what is now anymore, what the fuck's going to happen. But you could probably see that maybe happening, if we get into another counterinsurgency or to actual, conventional war or something like that. That, there's guys that are military, it's already social media influencers, not even combat guys. They're just kids on fucking TikTok and whatever. So, yeah, I gotta imagine when the next war kicks off, what that's gonna be like. It's gonna be fucking OPSEC nightmare. But it's But I know, man. I agree with you. I think it's kind of worth, especially capturing those stories and being able to like hand that off to people that they know. Even though they've been killed, they say, hey, out of respect, war fighters. Like, here you go. Off that last conversation. Like I said, they come in that full circle. I think that's a big thing too. Like having some closure. I think it's always, nice to have in some of those loops.
He seemed to really appreciate just me like taking like extra time out of my trip, to go like sit and have tea with him so we could read that story. It was a good moment. It was one of the highlights of the trip for sure.
Yeah. And so what was it like getting in?
To Ukraine?
Yeah.
Dude, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So I flew into Krakow this time instead of Warsaw, like last time, and I took 2 separate trains to get to Ukraine, and then went from the border to Kyiv, and then I was in Kyiv like a day, and then right away I went south. I interviewed a soldier in the hospital in Mykolaiv there, and then went into Kherson the day after that. And then I was in Kherson for like 12 days. And it was pretty, like, it's crazy because it's like a functioning operating city. So there's like restaurants open and stuff like that, but there's always artillery falling, and there's always
That's
drones,
wild.
and there's always drones flying
Yeah.
around.
So
Like,
you guys just like sitting there like underneath. Imagine you're like in cover, not close to the windows. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what happens when you walk in and get coffee in the morning? Like, what was that like? Like, what is you walk in? Is there like boarded up? Is there no one sitting by the windows? Like, what's the details of that?
So you'll like drive around and you'll see like tons of vehicles with like tiny little pieces of like duct tape on the sides of them, and my medic was like, that's like shrapnel from like drone, like grenades dropped from drones and stuff like that. And there's vehicles like that everywhere. And then there's like shell craters all over the roads. Like, I would say like at least 20% of the buildings there have some kind of damage to them from artillery, especially the further south you go. Like, if you go down south, like by the riverfront, like, you really can't get closer than 3 blocks unless you've got a death wish. So yeah, like, if you're in the northern half of the city, you can sit outside at night and like at like a hookah bar. There's always the chance like a round is going to land near you, but it's not as bad as like in the heart of Kherson and south of that. So like the grocery store, for example, like the doorway leading to it has like an L shape of HESCO barriers stacked three tall, and the windows are all boarded up. And then there's posters all over the place of like what drones look like, what they sound like, and what you should do if you see one. And it's crazy because like you walk around and you see like just signs of like the war everywhere, but like the people who live there are very adamant that it's not a dead city. Like, we are not leaving. We are here through occupation. We're here now that the Russians have us under siege across the river. Like, we're not leaving. And so people like try to maintain their way of life. And it's scary, like with the indiscriminate shelling. Like, the very first night we were there, we stayed in the northern part of the city, just kind of to get the feeling of it. Because when you go into Kherson, it's just a sketchy vibe, and I wanted to check out the area first, get the vibe of like what the artillery is like, what the drones are like and stuff like that. And so the very first night we're there, we're in this like old like wooden house in the northern part of the city, and we're like, we should be pretty fine here, like, I think we'll be good. And then little do we know, there's like a Ukrainian artillery unit like somewhere behind us, like one of those mobile like self-propelled artillery units, and it fired like one shot. Right away we knew it was outgoing, because like it sounds different. And then like 5 minutes later, a Russian artillery shell comes and hits right next to the house. And I'm like, this was supposed to be the safe part of town, Like, I got good audio of that, because like I was recording with my Osmo Pocket 3 out the window just to get the audio of what was going on. And I had set it up, and literally not even 30 seconds later, this shell comes in and it like hits right next to the house. You can hear debris fall over the house and like glass breaking and stuff like that. And the guy who was with me was like, holy shit, did you get that? I was like, yeah, I got it all. Like, we just set it up. And it's way worse like when you go further south. I got some more footage. We stayed in an apartment, so we specifically wanted an apartment tall enough to see across all the buildings and the Russian positions on the other side. And so I've got a lot of B-roll of just filming artillery off in the distance firing, or impacts and stuff like that. We got a good video of one of the artillery units on the Russian side getting hit by a Ukrainian artillery battery. That one woke me up in the middle of the night because it must have detonated a bunch of ammo too. Because it was bright. You know, you can see it on the footage. Like it's because it's like a kilometer, 2 kilometers away, but it's bright. You know, it like lights up all the buildings still, and that was pretty interesting. And in the drones, everywhere you go, like there's drone threat. It's not like if you went anywhere east, you know, and you're out in the villages there where you're like wearing full PPE and stuff like that. Because if like a drone or a collaborator sees you walking around with a helmet on and a plate carrier, like you're now a target. Like the drone, if it sees you, is going to follow your vehicle to see where it goes, and then it's going to go back, send out a grenade dropper, and it's going to wait there for you. Or they're just going to shell the house, something like that. So I had this kind of like those level 3 like police vests, you know, that you wear like under a hoodie. And I was just walking around with that, just hoping, you know, that nothing was going to hit the car, because there's like I wasn't wearing a helmet, you know, until we went to the 0 line, and then I was wearing like proper body armor and a helmet and stuff like that. But everywhere else in Kherson, I was just wearing the body armor under my sweatshirt, because it's just too dangerous. Like there's collaborators everywhere. Like when I was there, I believe they put a grenade under someone's car and it blew up. And so, and people get killed there all the time. Like that stalker guy I told you about, the developer for one of the games. Right before we had supper with him, a Russian drone dropped a grenade on a bunch of old ladies at a bus stop, you know. That was a bad one too, because all the bus stops have HESCO barriers around them. Because for that reason, you know, and like all the playgrounds have HESCO barriers around them. Like I said, life goes on in the city. You know, like I got some footage of some babushkas feeding pigeons during an air raid. Like and air raids in Kherson like mean nothing. Like a Shahed drone is coming, like they get shelled 600 times a day. They don't give a shit. Like
and I imagine, is it strategic? I imagine to hold that. I mean, clearly the Ukrainian government's pumping plenty of ammunition at troops said to hold that line. I mean, like I said, even logistically to keep that city going, you know, like I said, the grocery stores, the restaurants, you know, like it was a weird, I shouldn't say weird, but it was crazy for me because we were in Kiev, and it was like there wasn't even a war going on. And then you start making your way out to the front line, which is much different than it was obviously in March 22 when I was there. You know, everything, if the whole thing's gonna fall. But yeah, it was different, you know, like I had amazing sushi and the food was fantastic, and you know, I had coffee, you know, and whatnot. But it's just, you know, but you know, Kherson though, that sounds a bit different, especially such a big city. You know, I went out to Izium, which was much smaller. Kharkiv was getting shelled, but we still drove through it. It's, you know, we even drove like the outer part of it, and there's still like a ways to go to the front line, Kharkiv on the side, you know. So that's got to be kind of wild to, like I said, see a metropolitan city. And you showed me footage, and like you can see it on like Google Maps. You're like, dude, this is like a fucking city. Like skyscrapers.
It's like the size of Philadelphia or something like that. It's a big city.
Yeah, they're just shelling. You're like, we have a fucking coffee today, you know, and it's at food. So that's wild. That's incredible. And so it's the collaborator. So is there a lot of Russian sympathizers still in Kherson, or like what's up with that?
Yeah. So when the Russians left, like I got some crazy stories of civilians from this time, because a lot of the crimes against civilians happened in like the very last part of the occupation. But still, like as anywhere in Ukraine, there's going to be Russian sympathizers. There's going to be collaborators, stuff like that. Who they are, I don't know. Like what demographic they end up being, I don't know. But I was told when we go down there, like speak English as little as possible, because there's like 20 foreigners in the entire city. You know, like I've met probably half of the other foreigners who are living and working there. So it's one of those areas where it's like, you just have to be careful of collaborators and stuff like that. Like when I was recording out the window at night, like I told you, I had my camera backed up 2 or 3 feet off the window on a tripod, and I had like a paper shield around the lights and stuff, and then to cover the screen and to cover the buttons, and I had like tape over the recording buttons for two reasons. I didn't want a drone to see it and be like, oh, there's someone in there recording us. And I didn't want the neighbors to see it and like report me as a collaborator for like recording for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, that's something it's wild to hear that, because we didn't run into anything like that. I imagine once you get further into Kyiv and stuff like that, that they set those people off pretty quick. But they're massive cities. In the very well laid out cities. I was shocked when I went to Kyiv how like well laid out it is, and it's not congested, and it's massive. It's not big, but it's massive. It's like a weird. You can get around pretty quick, but it was like also just a big city area, and it's like gorgeous and robust, and very well oiled machine. I was shocked. It's one of the cleanest and most well run cities I've ever seen. I've ever been to. I've done a lot of traveling. And
even in Kherson, they make an effort to make the city look nice. Like even though it's like under siege and being attacked constantly, like there's still like sanitation workers out there working. They were like raking leaves up and like shoveling dirt and stuff like that. They're all wearing body armor, but they're still out there like at least trying to make the city look presentable. Even in Kramatorsk out east, they're still doing like renovations on buildings and stuff out there. Like they've got these big excavators, like laying new pipes and stuff like that. It's like, shouldn't you guys be like digging tank traps with those? But I'm not a city planner, but the Russians aren't that far away that direction.
Yeah. Well, I think too that because Izium, they were doing the same thing. They were like the buildings were still blowing out, the homes, and very reminiscent of when that was occupied. That was a super small town, but
I've been to Izium, so I know I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. But they were like the apartment complex was like they were replaced the windows, so like so I was like, oh, these are new, like they just put these in, the rest of the things suck, but like we stayed in like this house or not house, but this apartment, 10 by 10 apartment, from the Soviet era, and you're just like, Jesus, fuck communism, this is not cool, and you could just, it was like kitchen, bathroom, and then living room. There's no bedroom. Anyways,
that's like the house we stayed in that first night.
Yeah,
it was like a kitchen, bathroom, and then like a combined living room, bedroom area.
Exactly, yeah, which is insane to think about. Even like in the 50s, they're like in America, you said like one bedroom. It's like we live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Like we have a family of 6, but at least there was like 2 bedrooms. It's wild, it's crazy, and like I said, it's interesting to see how things still operate in war. It's a scale. I mean, it's the biggest war that Europe's seen, in a while. To the scale, and it's just crazy to see the logistics still moving. Like I said, I was eating sushi at Target, like fuck, and it was really good. And and you wouldn't even know that the city kept getting shelled, but you could see like the side of the buildings there, so they were working on them. It kind of had that remnants, and that was under occupation for the first. That was fought over. So, and pretty sketch. So yeah, it's just it's wild. I always said I wanted to go to war in not the Middle East, and so I'd like to go to Ukraine, and like we drove the rest of the country. I was like, well, I guess this is it. Like Eastern Europe is good enough.
Yeah, playing the storyline to COD 4 now. So
yeah, exactly. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I was like, it reminded me of Wisconsin. I was like, I even told my wife, we should buy property. She's like, are you fucking insane? I was like, well, hear me out. I was like, it's a dip, obviously, and I was like, we want to travel when we get retire. I mean, we could buy a house for like $20,000, and do the lease.
It's a beautiful country. Yeah. I told my fiance,
it's beautiful.
Like, when the war is over, like we need to go to Ukraine. And like I've been told I haven't even seen the pretty parts of it yet. Like everyone's like, you gotta go to the Carpathians. Like I interviewed a guy in Mykolaiv who had been in Kherson fighting since it got liberated. So since 2022, he was on like his first like official leave, and he's like a special forces combat medic. And he'd been over to the other side of the river like 7 times, and he was like, "You got to go to the Carpathians," you know.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy sitting talking to this guy. Like he was all excited to go on vacation, and then like realizing what a miracle it is that he's sitting in front of me, because it's one, like statistically, one trip over and back has 80% casualties, and he did 7 of them. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like just insane. And the fighting on the islands there, that's one of the most like slept on parts of this war, because it's like on the islands you can't dig in because it's all like white sand. You know, like you can't dig a hole because you go 6 inches deep and it's filled with water. And so they're just hiding in tall grass and maneuvering through areas where they're like waist deep in water. And he told me about this firefight where they were on a patrol and the Russians were on a patrol. They bumped into each other. The Ukrainians saw the Russians first, but they didn't know who they were because there was a Marine unit working next to them somewhere. And then the guy told me he saw red tape on one of the guy's rifle slings, and he's like, "That's good enough. Let's start shooting." And he's like, when you're in water that deep, you can't move, so that you're not like maneuvering on the enemy, you know. So it's like wherever you're kind of standing, that's where you're standing until you're dead or you win the firefight. And he's like, he told me like in that moment, the only thing he was worried about was that if he got killed, his body armor would sink him to the bottom and they'd never find his body.
Yeah.
And that's like another shitty part of the fighting on the islands, dude, is like, there's a lot of guys who just had to like strip the body armor off their friends and just kind of roll them into the river because they can't get it back across.
Yeah. I've seen that, the drone footage, they're like dropping on the Russians coming. It's kind of famous. I don't say it's famous, but it's one of thousands of the drone footage. They like hit the drone boat, or the boat's going across the river. I'm just curious. They drop a grenade in the middle of the boat, like the Russians are about to get off. It hits that. They like, the one dude like slide, and you see him like flailing in the water. It's like, and he just drowns.
Oh yeah.
Like, God damn it! Like
when I was there, I didn't witness this personally. This was further down the line from where I was in the trenches. But there were 6 Russians who tried to come across on 3 jet skis, and a Ukrainian FPV drone like buzzed one of the jet skis, and the guy on the back of one of them got scared and fell off and drowned immediately because he was wearing steel plates. Like he fell off and they just didn't see him again because he just went straight to the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, you're going to, even if you have regular shit, you're not going to last long. Like,
no.
You know, unless you know how to kick for like maybe 15 seconds, you know what I mean? Like even you better know how to strip that body armor off.
Yeah.
You know,
like
it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah. Building off of that again, that guy I had supper with, the combat medic, he told me a pretty funny story, hindsight, of how he almost drowned getting off the boat. Cause like they had just pulled the boat up onto the shore, and the guys on the boat were supposed to dismount before people getting on the boat were gonna like get on it. But the guys who were gonna get on it started getting on first. And so like he just looked to his left and he saw another boat, and he saw the guys jumping off the back of it and only ending up in like knee deep water. And so he's like, okay, I'll do that too. So he jumps off the back, goes straight down, you know, and he like manages to grab to the side of the boat and pull himself up. And he almost drowned, you know, even his body armor, you know, it's not steel plates, but it like sent him straight to the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. Magazines, everything. Yeah.
And he told me
straight down.
He was like miserable as fuck at this point. And he went to dry his stuff off. So he took off his body armor. He took off his uniform, took off his boots and his socks. So he's just standing there naked on the beach, smoking a cigarette. And he hears a buzzing. And he looks to his right and he sees this Russian like recon drone just watching him. And he said it must have been so funny for the Russian drone operator, because the operator went over there looking for like fully kitted, you know, like Ukrainian special forces guys. And all he sees is a naked dude smoking a cigarette on a beach, you know? So it's
Throws him off.
Tons of stories like that of just fighting on the islands, and it's just how miserable it is, especially in the winter, dude, because like there's no cover, because all that grass dies, you know, it gets matted down by snow, and it's just cold, and everyone can see everyone, you know. Like I sent you that picture of what I could see from the bank I was at, and I could see straight across the river, you know?
Yep.
And it's like, there's Russians in front of me. Like I took a picture of that, and God knows how many Russians are like hiding in those reeds down there.
Very good. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think that's something too. And yeah, you know, Ukraine is like this big test bed. Honestly, like I you know, imagine all the guys in the U.S. military are tracking them, but the hires aren't. Like it's just you know, I don't hear enough of like, oh yeah, we've been taking the tactics that the Ukrainians and all these after actions that they've been doing, and we've been applying them to our SOPs. You don't hear that from any of the commanders. So I imagine a lot of this is coming down to the squad leads, but then they get out of units, or they just get out of the Marine Corps, they get out of the infantry, and you know, it's they have to take the initiative themselves. But also, it's all hip pocket shit. You know what I mean? So, you know, what is the last time that we were like, hey, this is what it's like to fight in waist deep water. Like we have to take this out, and like no one has that fucking SOP. There's not an SOP for that. I guarantee it. Nowhere in the Army or the Marine Corps, like, well, we go to the beach and well, recon will take care of it. It's like, yeah, are we? You know, like I doubt it. I doubt anyone has any, even with a trench clearing. You know, basically being, you know, updating the trench clearing tactics.
Right? Yeah, like everything I was taught 10 years ago is obsolete now. Like other than some like basic fieldcraft stuff and marksmanship, like pretty much everything else I taught was just
Well, some of the stuff we were taught, you can see the Ukraine now. It's probably because they're fighting Russians. So you know, it's like okay, it comes almost down to the psychology of it. Like you see, like if you have the animosity and talking with the chosen company guys, a lot of the tactics that we used that were psychological in the aspect, or the aggressiveness of violence, or the violence of action, that is what applies almost everywhere, you know? So they were saying like, if you just storm, like that's the big thing with Ukrainians and Russians, is that if you just storm a trench and you just keep moving, you just keep going, and you know, because they'll stop. He's like, that's when both sides lose momentum and they get into stalemates. He's like, just keep moving. You know, that's the thing. And you see it on some of these, you know, Ukrainians that are fighting off like 7 Russians. It's because of the violence of action that they use. I think there was one that was just posted of the guy that was kept shooting the machine gun and like held off, like, and they tried moving up on him. He died.
Yeah, I interviewed. I tried to find him that day. And then his battalion press officer reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, Vadim, he died, but this is his friend who witnessed it." You know, and I was able to interview him about the events of that day. But you're right. The violence of action, because he's in camouflage pants, boots, and a t-shirt with magazines in his pocket, you know, and he fought off 7 Russians.
Yep.
Just the violence of action. Because he was firing at a rate, it sounded like a fire team was right over the parapet from them. And it was one guy.
Exactly. And that's a tactic that we were taught too at cyber military. Just like the violence of action, you have to seem bigger than you are. Like aggressive move, you know, like in the infantry is like, just keep fucking going, you know? So that type of mentality, it's almost that training is what gets you there. You know, like this is what's separating the good, really good assault units from the regular units in Ukraine. The Western units like chosen, they know what they're doing because they've been, you know, they're us, they're, you know, and they also like, we're here to fight. And it's like, we just keep going down that trench till everyone's dead. Like, you know, we don't stop, which is what you're supposed to do. You know, like you can't, if someone gets hit, okay, we'll move to the side, keep going. Like you have to keep moving. You know, that's something that we were trained to do. But now you're seeing it implemented. And it's not, you know, like you're taking on squad size elements or your company, or, you know, you just keep fighting, you just keep pushing, you keep firing rockets, you keep firing the machine guns, you know, and that psychologically itself, if people don't want to be there, the enemy's, what's going on? You know, that slows them down and it pushes them back. You know, and like I said, you start to see more of that. That's what works. But you said, the new tactics, though, it's like, man, you better get some new trench clear tactics because, you know, clearly the shit that we were taught probably ain't gonna work. You know, I did some in the Big Island, Hawaii. We did some trench clearing tactics. It was just part of like the workup, even though we were going to Iraq. They're like, all right, we're gonna run through this training lane in Hawaii on the Big Island. It was like a trench clearing. You know, it's pretty standard infantry stuff, like trench clearing. But yeah, I mean, you know, you're going down and it's, you know, it's not the, you know, having 5 grenades attached to your back and like fucking fragging every corner, and you just keep firing rounds, just keep firing no matter what, you know, just all the way down, drop frag, I go, you know.
Yeah, it would have been awesome. Backpack with 50 grenades in it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. The coyotes would be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like burning through like 9 magazines, you know. but here we are. You know, it's like that's what you got to do.
Yeah, dude.
So yeah, it's kind of funny seeing the conventional tactics going on in this war. Obviously, the innovations and things are coming out of it. It's wild.
Just
Yeah.
drones have just changed everything so much.
Oh, big time. Dude,
Like,
it still makes me mad that I didn't get to go to Afghanistan 2018-19, because that's when the first Mavics came out and they also had thermals on them. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to Afghanistan. I'm fucking buying this, and I was like, dude, that's just stuff we could do, like that was in 2018, 2019, even in 2016, 17, it'd been like, oh my God, and they weren't even to the capabilities they are now.
yeah, because
And
when I was
FPV, yeah,
my
holy
last
shit.
year active duty, they were talking about implementing drones into a rifle squad. But, I was of the mentality, I was like, oh, that's like we're gonna take up a whole rifleman just to fly around a remote controlled plane. Like that, what a waste. God, was I wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, they kind of had the concept of this bullshit fucking fixed wing UAVs, but they never, no one could see what the fuck's going on. They only went back to the talk. Yeah, they never implemented the squad level. It was always company, and they crash constantly. But
yeah, I
yeah,
remember
it's
going out in the woods for days looking for those things.
yeah, Sam. Yeah, we do. Hey, we gotta go get the what are they called?
Are
Uh,
they ravens?
Ravens. Yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta get the fucking Raven. Because it crashed somewhere. Said yeah. They're like, and then they found out that it was just like styrofoam and some cheap ass fucking parts from like a
Yeah,
Hobby
yeah.
Lobby or something like that. And they were charging like the military like $15,000 to $30,000 per fucking unit. Yeah, it's wild. But no, I agree. It's drones really changed the game. I mean, you still got to do the other stuff, but like the 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 thermals, the stuff that you can fly, squad level, team level type stuff. It's interesting here too with the recon dudes. They're like, you're not going out like on a recon mission and like spotting because the thermal drones are gonna pick you up in a fucking heartbeat. So the
It's
days
changed
of
sniping too.
yeah,
A lot of the
sniping,
snipers I
everything, yeah,
talk to now, they're like, if you go out to do like a sniper mission in like a wood line or anywhere not in a city, they're like, you're fucked.
yeah,
Like we don't
yep,
do that anymore. We don't operate outside of buildings anymore. Is
yep,
basically the vibe I was getting from them because they're like, a thermal drone's gonna see you and you're gonna die.
yep, yep. Which is crazy to think about, because it's like we were trained into like up until now you could do long range, especially like long range reconnaissance, the LERP units, or even the tactic that we had pitched to one of the telecommanders go in 2009. They just didn't have the budget. We were like, hey, we'll do it. It was like a scout concept, but like long range. I was like, well, why don't we, you'll send us to 2 teams and there'll be a team of 4, or 6 or something like that, but we're not snipers, you know what I mean? Like we'd be fast and light. So, I'm talking like a day pack, but we're
Yeah.
going 5, 6, 10 clicks in and we can hit a house and we can get out. Or, kind of like, because I had been in Afghanistan in the mountains and I was like, we can do some real fucking damage. Just give us 12 mags a day pack. We'll stay out there for 3, 4 nights in the mountains, just hunting dudes down. Like we could do that. Now you're kind of like, I don't know if that could fly because like I said, thermals, you're going to get picked up and, and then they're going to call in FPVs or whatever. So it is kind of interesting to see the sniper tactics. Like you said, now it's, and I get with the Ukrainians, it's mostly urban, if you're, unless you're doing some crazy long range shooting, like 2 miles out with like a shy tech or
It's
something.
changed
Or even whatever.
Kazakh too.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Like
Kazakh
completely.
Yeah.
Like most guys out now they're carried out by hand.
Yeah.
Because it's like I was with an ambulance team for like a whole day. I think I told you when I was there that we're like hearing them on the radio asking for help, but it's like they can't send the ambulance to go pick them up because if the ambulance gets hit, there's all the combat medics and there's the ambulance for the battalion. So it's like so like the whole time I was with the ambulance, we didn't get to go out because the drone threat was too high. So I was just sitting in this house just a couple kilometers off the front line, staring at this ambulance that we were never going to get in. And then I went to a stabilization point and almost everyone who went there was wounded by an FPV drone.
Yeah.
So we were there like 4 or 5 hours, and there were 15 casualties that came in. There's one amputation. One guy came in with like shrapnel all down his back, and he had a bullet wound in his shoulder. And so, like, to film them, you got to ask their permission, you know.
Yep.
So I asked this guy. I was like, "Can I film you?" You know, because he's like completely naked, like face down, like getting worked on by these doctors. My translator asked him, and he says something back and kind of smiles to himself. And I was like, "What did he say?" He's like, "Yeah, just make sure you blur out my butthole." Because it's like, it's very you'll see in the footage, it's like very clear. Yeah. There it is, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, even the doctors were saying there that 80% of the casualties that come in are wounded by shrapnel from indirect fire or drones.
Oh, drones. Yeah. And that's you don't hear much on the Russian side, obviously, because I probably don't follow the Russian Telegram channels, but like, you know, it feels like it's much more of a Ukrainian thing with the FPVs, but because of the amount they're building in Ukraine, but I don't know what the ratio is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't think of Russians having access to a shitload of FPVs like Ukrainians do, but
so
obviously,
from what I understand, the FPV, and I could be completely wrong, don't tear me apart in the comments, but from what I understand is it's more or less equalized, because Ukraine has realized like they're at like a 1-to-7 ratio for artillery, right? So the Ukraine has kind of figured out like, okay, why spend 20 artillery shells to knock out a bunker if we could send 2 FPVs? You know, so that's kind of how they're like negating the Russian artillery superiority, kind of, you know, like a 7-to-1 artillery ratio is still horrible, but so the drones are more or less equal on either side, but it's just terrible because it's like made everything stagnant because no one can move forward.
Well, I feel too, I think, but yeah, like we talk tactics and strategy now, but I feel like the U.S. support has been, it's just enough to keep them alive. You know what I mean? It's not enough to win. And I think now with the elections over, because when we were there, we were there in September, right? I'm sure they talked about the election and all. When we were there, that they absolutely like, hey,
chatted with me all the time about who I was voting for and what they thought, what I thought Kamala would do or what I thought Trump would do.
Yeah, same. Yep.
I've got my own opinions on that. Europe, either way, you can see is preparing for this and stepping up to defend Europe, you know, which I think they should do. Like Ukraine, it wants to be a European nation. Europe can step up a little more and contribute. Not that they haven't, you know, like Europe has done a great job, but like they can contribute more. And you can see they are.
Yeah, the GWAT really stagnated everybody. Like complacency.
They just relied on the United States for defense.
Yeah, they're like, the U.S. will just fucking fight this war the next 20, you know, whatever. And Russia will never do anything crazy, you know. And then this happens. They're like, holy shit, we don't have anything. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have anything. So yeah, and I think so too. I think what you're talking about, like, then it comes to the violence of action of tactics, and I think the reason why Ukrainians probably haven't tried to gain much, or they just kind of duke it out and they slowly lose land at some of these, it's just because they just like, why would we spend so much, you know, time and effort, bodies to take these positions if we're gonna not have enough to sustain it? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, like, so it's like, I think, you know, if you know, I don't know how things are gonna pan out, you know. But if you were like, we need to take back the lines of 22, you know, that's the aspect of like the U.S. stepping in and go, well, we're going to give you everything you need. And, you know, but you guys put everybody into that fucking. And then I do think that you could move those lines. Not say quickly, but I think you could proficiently move them pretty quick, you know, like, because I think it's just an all out. If you go an all out assault, the FPVs can't catch up or keep up. You know, you're going to eventually storm the position. You guys got to storm the positions. Just fucking send 100 vehicles in, fully loaded. Tanks, everything. You will take those positions, and you're gonna sniff out all those drone teams, and they're not gonna be able to communicate. And it's still Russia, you know. I think they'll crumble, but you know they're not gonna have their best up front in all these places. You know, look at Kursk. They're not gonna take Kursk. You know, it's like you know. So if you take something from them and you can sustainably hold it and logistics train it, you know. So I do think that there's still hope for them, but who knows, man? I just heard rumors today. It's something about Zelensky's thing about seceding the land, just to end the war. But I don't know how rumored that is. But then other people are like, well, Trump will figure it out. The war is going to end. It's just how long and when, or what's going to see. I think it's going to be.
Yeah, and even
I think come January, I think it's like 6 months. I honestly do. I think by the and then I could split rock by all these.
Yeah, I think even when it does end, it's not gonna there's elements on both sides that are not gonna stop fighting. We saw the 10-year low level trench war from 2015 to 2021. That. Those weren't even official parts of the military a lot of the time. It was these militia groups, the founding of Azov and Right Sector and all these other militias, the DPR, LPR guys, or LNR, sorry.
Yeah.
Or whatever, one of those Eastern republics. Even if the war ends, it's not going to end, there's still going to be people dying up and down the front line everywhere. I've spoken to people like there's enough hate in this war now where just because a peace treaty signed, it's not gonna, or not a peace treaty, but at least a ceasefire, it's not gonna stop enough people to say okay, it's over. It's gonna
look, hey man, wars is the strategy of it. They want what's in that land, homie. And Russia's got the time and the bodies to do it. So in my opinion, they're like, oh, we'll let you have the land. Of when you got 10 years, you better build up those fucking tank traps because they're coming right back at you. They will. Yeah. They will. Their next Putin will
and that's what I'm predicting too. Putin is going to make up another excuse 5-10 years from wherever the ceasefire is. He's going to, make up another excuse, and it's going to start up all over again. Except this next time, the support from Europe is not going to be there because it's going to be, again,
Yeah.
So
the other thing too is I think the Ukrainians probably learned their lesson of we got to build these tank traps. We're going to be a lot closer with the U.S. coalition, even if they don't become a part of NATO. You can guarantee that they're going to invite every single swinging dick advisor to help train the units and help be a part of the tactics and like I said, you got Western guys that are now commanding units up there. That has to integrate into the culture. And like I said, building tank traps, building. Every house is going to have absolutely anti-tank weapons. You know what I mean? That's a real thing. It was funny when I was talking to them. Can I, talking with the Western fighters from where they're guys that, it was weird because you're just talking to your buddy. And I'm talking to Donut and all these other guys. I was like, yeah. And Ryan, I was like, yeah, if I want to buy a house, I can do that right here. And he's like, oh yeah. Yeah. It was you signed the 100-year lease, just like any other country. You go to Rotate, you go to, Porter's, find land. And I was like, can I get weapons and stuff here? He's like, yeah. So I'll do whatever you want. And I was like, awesome. I was like, he RPGs. He's like, I'll get you the American-made RPGs. We'll get you all the RPGs. I was like, can I get a javelin? He's like, no, those are. He's like, those are a much more high cost. He's like, you're not, those are a little more track these days. And he's like, get you RPGs all day long. He'll get you any weapon. He goes, PKM. I'll get you PKM right now. He's like, hey, and I was like, that's so fucking awesome. But I think that's what Ukrainians will learn is, even when we were there with Backyard Camp, it was very much a the pro gun movement or the pro gun rates is sweeping across as it should. They already kind of have it, but I think now they have a way more legitimate reason. And even if there's a ceasefire or a peace deal, quote unquote, dude, I would be selling weapons. It's going to be like candy.
And it's open a gun shop.
Yeah, it's open a gun shop on every border town. Just be like, hey, here you go. It's every just fucking buy a home. Here's free PKM. 1,000 rounds of ammo. Seriously, and I think that's something because they talked about the old timers, something about leaving their hand weapons out and to the civilians, and then some civilians had, I think after 2014 or something like that, they buried their AKs and I buried them from the backyard, hand them off to soldiers and shit. Mm-hmm. That helped push, sustain guys to push back Russians and shit like that. You're gonna have to do that. That the culture has to change. But I in my opinion, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I think, not to go politics, but it's still politics, war politics. I don't think Trump wants to lose. So it's going to be one of those.
That's one of those things too, though, that I could see it swinging the other way, because I think, not to make anyone upset, but I think Trump thinks that Putin respects him more than he does.
Yeah.
And to Putin, everyone is just a means to an end.
Yeah.
So I think Trump thinks he's going to come in and make some sort of deal. And if the Ukrainians or Putin doesn't want it, he's going to be like, fine, 10,000 more M2 Bradleys to Ukraine. How's that sound? Something like that. I could see that being equally as plausible.
Yeah, exactly. I
because
agree.
If people read what's in an aid package to Ukraine, a lot of it is just paying ourselves to build new stuff. That's a sizable chunk of a lot of it. And if you're looking at it from a purely selfish standpoint, the United States is making money off of it.
Yeah.
They're opening new arms factories, replenishing our own stocks, modernizing a lot of our own equipment. At the end of the day, it kind of is like a good deal on our part, because then you've got like a loyal country on the border of Russia as well.
Yeah. Well, and Europeans are different too than say like Afghans. Like we should have stayed in Afghanistan because we would have foothold in the Middle East. We could develop it. It was developed, but like you're still like, hey, even if the government's corrupt, you could maybe 10 years from now you get an administration. It's like, fuck you, we're a puppet government. This shit. Like, yeah, we've been there for 30 years. Like we could have easily done that, obviously like for 20, but Europe is obviously different. Like there's a real threat. They love us. I mean, that's the fun thing going over there, because you're kind of like, some people are like, how do they think of Americans? It's like, they better fucking love us. And they did. They're like,
everywhere I went was nothing but friendly faces and handshakes.
Exactly. I was like, English, and they're all like, English. If like everyone knows English, they're all fucking know English, and they're like super nice. They knew I was an American,
and they all want American flags.
Exactly.
I collect patches and stuff like that. So I brought like 25 2nd Marine Division patches down with me, and I traded patches and stuff like that. But like a lot of them were asking for like full size real American flags, and I didn't have one. And I was with that FPV team, like I said, and one of the guys really wanted one. He was like, I want, like, if you could go home and mail me one, like I would be so grateful. So I did. I mailed him a flag. And he sent like a ton of like Russian trophies, like as a thank you. So he sent me like a plate carrier and a helmet, like a flag, stuff like that, like stuff way not equal in value, but he's like just wanted like a real American flag from the United States.
Well, I think if you're sitting in their shoes psychologically, we are the only reason they are who they are right now. Like we're the only reason why they have ammunition to shoot back. We're the only reason why they're getting paid still. The only reason why their family's still somewhat safe in Kyiv, like even the support. I think it's kind of weird with the politics in our country with Ukraine, because they're like, oh, why are we sending all this money? It's like, yeah, that's true. But I mean, like, look at Afghanistan. They're like, well, did you get free college out of that? Did you get free healthcare when we pulled out? No, like billions of dollars and go fucking anywhere. Now it's a black hole. And so Europe, this is very much our war. It's very much our fight. Like it very much is.
I agree. It's okay Russia is not our friend.
No, they're not.
Their state media, their state media argues that they should nuke us like once a week on TV. Like I'm so as an American, I believe anyone can have the right to think and say what they want. But I just think it's so silly how we have like so many people have switched to like a semi-pro Russian stance on someone who literally want to weaken our country. They would love nothing more than to send nuclear bombs at every state capital. If they could do that and get away with it, they 100% would.
They would, yeah. And I think too that's just the downside of our politics. And I think when I saw that in like March and April, what people started to be like, why are we saying it? It's like, you're doing this because it's just Biden's the president. So you have this weird Republican backlash. I was like,
100%.
This is what Republican. This is like a die-in-the-wool Republican thing happening right now. This is what we live for. I mean, this is 50 years of the Cold War, Reagan era. Communism sucks.
Dude,
Russia, all this shit.
100%.
And now suddenly you're like, oh, Putin's not that bad of a guy. Like, why are we setting who keep the Ukrainians corrupt? I was like, everyone's fucking.
Dude, and here's the thing too is like people, they don't complain until like their favorite politician tells them to complain, right?
Exactly.
So, like we spent $300 million a day on the GWAT, like a single day, and no one said it. Like no one, no one complained about that, right?
Exactly.
And then,
yeah.
so the money we have sent to Ukraine equals like 0.8% of like our yearly budget, of money that we can
Yep.
spend. And people are pretending like we're just
Yeah.
breaking the bank on
Yeah.
this, and
Exactly.
it's like that's not the case at all.
No.
And I guarantee you, if Trump switches, which I think there's a chance he could, right? If he switch, because I don't think he'll just straight up abandon Ukraine, like one that makes us look bad,
That's
because we just
idea.
abandoned Afghanistan, right? So like,
yeah, he's not going to abandon Ukraine.
He's not going to abandon
No.
Ukraine, but I guarantee you, the second that switch happens, if it does, all the Republicans are suddenly gonna, get on the train of like, yeah, we need to fight Russia and defend European sovereignty, and everyone who was opposed to Russia initially is going to switch, because that's just what happens. Like, I have a theory, like you could bring back. Oh, never mind. I'm not going to go there. But like,
yeah, I know what you mean. But that's what it feels like, and that's
exactly what it feels like. It feels like
exactly.
Just because Biden is president, no matter everything he does is terrible. Doesn't matter what it is, like.
You do the opposite.
And
so
it's the opposite.
Do the opposite. Yeah.
And it's silly because like I do believe in my heart of hearts, like I have my own personal opinions about Russia and Russian soldiers, right? But like I think from an American standpoint, at the very least, Russia is an adversary.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So like I guarantee you, like if for whatever reason all our nukes went offline for like 24 hours, Russia would be sending theirs. They're like, hurry, get them, like before they can get it. It's just.
And I agree. I think there's something too. I mean, it's a crazy, like they underestimate, like Russia completely underestimated Ukraine war, like completely underestimated.
100%, dude. I guarantee you that, like, because they thought
they fucked up so bad.
They were bringing parade uniforms in tanks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That Army Group North that came down from Belarus, like they had parade uniforms in their vehicles because they thought they were just going to walk into Kyiv and. Because like they did in 2014, right? They just took Crimea with like minimal effort. They took Donetsk after a pretty savage battle at Donetsk airport. But they again, that was just they just walked right in, took it. I think they thought they would come into Ukraine on the first day, and the Ukrainian army would just collapse, which it would have if they would have kept going in 2014. But now Ukrainians, I think, have a much more, especially now after all these people have died, that they've got a much stronger sense of a national identity, because it's only been a sovereign country since 1991. Now that generation of kids has grown up. They've got families of their own now, a lot of them. So it's a much stronger national identity of like, okay, we are Ukrainians. And that's again, that's another reason why I think that if the ceasefire happens, not everyone's going to stop fighting.
No, I think the thing is, I think again, geopolitics. I think he's surrounding himself with guys that are, because everyone's like, we should end the war. Yeah, you got to end the war. You got to win the war. And I agree with you. I think the Afghan can't just hand it over. He's not going to hand it over. That's for sure.
No,
because of the implications of that. Like, no way.
I agree. It's too dangerous to end the war in ways that Putin can present to his people that they have defeated the West. Yeah.
Also, too, it's like, all right, well, I think he's going to surround himself with enough people. And like, look, man, like you open the people out, but there's perks to that shit. There's perks of being number one in the world. They have plenty of resources. They like, stop acting like you're like, oh my God, they do it for the reasons. Yeah, that's what Russia was trying to go in for. We didn't start this motherfucking war, but if we end it, guess what? We get a lot of perks from that. You know what I mean? And Ukraine's just going to benefit that much more. Like, we help them take back 22 lines. Great. They're going to be like, all right, well, guess who's our next best friend right now? Guess where the next units are going to build their military bases? Guess where we're going to get all of these minerals and all this, like, whatever the fuck that's under the ground. Like, guess who's going to be cashing on that? Absolutely, because we help them survive. And by the way, they're not against that. It's not like they're like, oh my God, they're going to colonize us or something. It's Ukrainians, like, like I said, I think a lot of people speak about that because they've never been there. Like, because all these people, I know they have never been to Ukraine. Like,
no,
or
they never spoken to someone from there.
Yeah, I'm like, do you understand that they hate these people? Like, they hate Russians. I don't think Americans understand when they go to other countries. Like I've been to Central South America. Like you want to see some like real racism. You want to see some real national, like real stuff where they hate just because they come. Like they will murder people. Like and Americans don't quite understand that. Like
we live in a bubble.
Live in a bubble. It's like we'll just see the land and the war is over. It's like they don't want to see the land. Are you serious? Like they want to take back Crimea, by the way. They think that I've told a lot of the Ukrainians that when we were talking about that over beers and stuff. I'm like, you're not taking Crimea. I was like, I hate to say it. I was like, you try to take Crimea, dude, you lose all Western support. And you will lose the war. Like they'll stop. All the aid will stop coming. You're going to turn the West against you. I get it why you want it. It's lost. It's gone. Write it. I hate to say it. Write it off. Into the canal of history. Maybe in 30 years, you guys build yourself up to some superpower. Fucking retake it whenever. But right now, it's not happening. It's not. And they were like, you could tell the Ukrainians have been defeated on that. They were like, yeah. But I was like, look, I think you guys should absolutely fight to take back the 22 lines. Like that's very doable. I even looked at the map. It's not. I should say it's not a lot of land. It's still a lot of land, but it's not as much as I thought it was.
When you think of the number of people who have died, right? So like when you zoom way in, right, it looks pretty bad. But then if you just zoom out a little bit, like the Russians in a lot of spots have only moved like 30 miles in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like that's cost what? Like 50,000 guys for this one specific part of the front line.
Yeah, the numbers are nuts, by the way.
I don't think Russia has the ability to take Kyiv. And I don't think they have the ability even to take Kharkiv in the northeast. Just because of the attritional rate at that everyone is losing stuff. Like you can see a video online, like it feels like every other day there's some new like convoy or assault group of Russians or Ukrainians just getting slaughtered to the last man, slaughtered to the last vehicle. And it's like any big push like that is just going to attract all the local FPV teams, all the local artillery, and it's just like I said, it's
unless you're doing an all-out war offensive. And you can call it, like I said, it's just you're just gonna just drive as fast as you can straight into the heart of everything and just start dropping dudes off and duking it out. Like, but they could do it, but I think it's just. And I was telling everybody they're just holding on to what happened in the election, and then now till January, then they can officially sit down and be like, what's the battle plan? Because they could, man. I mean, like I said, they get enough people around, that are like, because Zelensky said we're not into the war, and then you're like. Okay, like what do you say to that? And the Russians like, we're not gonna war. Like, all right, well, like you said, well, fuck them. Like, let's give them everything they need to end the war.
Yeah. Because we've just like you said earlier, we've been drip feeding Ukraine enough to not die, but we have enough stuff scheduled to be dermoed to change the tide.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing is. Yeah, I right now I could write it like if I went in front of like SecDef and everything, I'd be like, this is what they did. I was like, I could write a list right now on a fucking PDF, and we can get it in 2 weeks. We can have it in the hands of every soldier. Be like, can you talk about communications, like radios, night vision, helmets, and body armor? Yeah, we can give me fucking a budget and give me fucking 3 weeks, and I'll have it in their hands. Like that's the thing that people don't understand. Where they're like, oh, these these guys are not getting it. Like they're not getting it. And even like communications and night vision, like night assault platoon is their special forces platoon because not everyone has it. Russians don't have. I mean, some do, but most of the majority of them Russians don't have night vision.
It's the same with the Ukrainians. I've spoken to enough
Ukrainians
guys
are kind of the same way too. Yeah,
who just shoot at stuff in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. And then you imagine if you give them all fucking dual tubes, and just like be like, hey, go, they'd be night assaulting, day assaulting, night. They just keep going. And it makes a completely different change in tactics of a war. That Russian couldn't keep up with.
No.
So yeah, in the logistics trade, just keep them fed, keep the ammo coming, keep the weapon going. That's I should say that's it. But I think it's not as complicated as people think. It's not super easy, but it's also, don't overthink this shit.
It's just a logistics game now at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It is a logistics game.
Because the will to fight is there. They just need beans, bullets, Band-Aids, man.
Yep. I agree. Oh, shit, man. That was a great conversation. Let's get you out there. But that was awesome. Where can people find you? Where's, see your footage or your books or whatever? What
So
can they find you?
everything. So you can find me primarily on Instagram. I'm Nick Laidlaw. There is my personal account, and then battles_and_beers. So battles and beers. You can find me on Instagram, and it's the same on YouTube. You can find it all in my link tree on Instagram, all my socials and stuff there. I'm pretty easy to find. And then books,
So
Amazon, Linktree too. Everything's there. I made it nice and easy. Made it marine proof.
hell yeah. Fuck yeah, brother. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.